"We don't need old men like you dragging us down." That's what she said. No preamble, no decency. Just those words, like I was a frayed wire she could snip with one manicured hand. Vanessa Harper, 28, fresh out of Miami with a business degree and a chip on her shoulder the size of the damn factory floor. My name is Stanley Row. I'm 59, and until that Tuesday morning, I was the operations manager at Harper Machinery. 18 years. I'd spent nearly 2 decades keeping that place from falling apart. I wasn't flashy, never tried to be, just steady, dependable. The guy who remembered which of our custom lathe units needed hand tensioning before they shipped. The one who noticed when invoices didn't match the packing logs. The one people came to quietly, after hours, when they needed something done right, not fast. But none of that mattered now. I stood there in her father's old office, staring at a desk that still had Charles Harper's nameplate tucked in the corner drawer, while his daughter decided I was dead weight. She didn't even sit up straight when she said it, just flicked her blonde hair over her shoulder and smiled like she was swiping left on an app. "Thank you for your service," she added, as if the words cost her something. I nodded once, gave her a small smile, not the kind that forgives, but the kind that remembers. Then I turned, opened the door, and walked out. No shouting, no grand exit, just me and the sound of my boots on tile. No one met my eyes as I crossed the bullpen. I'd trained half of them, watched boys grow into men, watched girls become managers, watched whole families start from nothing on that floor. But now they couldn't even look at me. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they thought silence made them safe. I packed my things into one cardboard box. A framed photo of my wife, Linda, gone 4 years now. A carved ashtray I'd made in a high school shop class and never used. A worn leather notebook filled with process tweaks and machine specs no one else knew. I carried the box to my truck and sat for a moment with my hands on the wheel. What Vanessa didn't know, what no one had thought to check, was the contract Charles Harper and I signed 18 years ago. Clause 17, severance, 2 years' salary guaranteed. They called me the guy who made the floor hum, not because I barked orders or hovered over people, but because I knew the language of machines, the rhythm of gears, the tension in a misaligned belt, the way a hydraulic press sounded when it was about to fail. I wasn't just the operations manager. I was the pulse of Harper Machinery for 18 years. I'd joined when the place was still rough around the edges, back when the break room smelled like old coffee and WD-40, and the production floor echoed more than it sang. Harper had hired me personally. I was 41 at the time, coming off a layoff from an auto parts plant that had shipped its soul overseas. I had no MBA, just calluses and a community college degree in mechanical engineering. Charles didn't seem to mind. "Credentials don't build machines," he'd said in our first meeting. "Men with sense and skill do." That was Charles, straightforward, tough but loyal. He gave me room to work, space to lead. Within 2 years, I was running the floor. Within 4, I was his second in command. I trained every supervisor who came through those doors. Promoted from within when I could. Fought to keep fabrication in-house when consultants urged outsourcing. Our reliability was our reputation. That wasn't just a tagline. It was personal. So was everything back then. When my wife Linda got sick, Charles didn't just offer sympathy. He rearranged my schedule so I could take her to every appointment. "Family first, Stanley," and he meant it. After she passed, the guys on the floor chipped in for flowers and a bench and her name near the maple tree she loved behind the office. That's the kind of place Harper Machinery was, or used to be. Then came the buzzwords. Agility. Market disruption. Vanessa walked in wearing Gucci heels and a vision board. She talked about efficiency without understanding momentum, scale without knowing mass. Her voice echoed in rooms I used to anchor. To her, I was just part of the old furniture, something to polish or toss out. But Charles had built Harper. On more than spreadsheets, he'd built it on people. And I wasn't done building yet. I sat at my kitchen table, steam curling off a mug of black coffee gone cold. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting long, slatted shadows across the contract spread out before me. A contract I hadn't looked at in years, not since Charles and I updated it after my 20th work anniversary. Back then, it had felt ceremonial, a nod to loyalty. Now it was ammunition. Harold Preston sat across from me, glasses perched at the end of his nose, a highlighter in hand. He was an old friend, not just in years, but in battles fought. If Harper Machinery was my life's work, Harold was the man who made sure it was protected from every angle. Section 12, paragraph 3, he said, tapping the paper. Termination without cause. That's the phrase you're looking for. I followed his finger to the clause highlighted in yellow. In the event of termination without documented cause, the employee shall receive a severance package equivalent to 24 months' base salary. Harold leaned back in the chair, folding his hands. It's ironclad, Stanley. Vanessa didn't do her homework. If she had, she'd know she just handed you a winning hand. I didn't smile. This wasn't about payback. Not really. It was about principle. About reminding people like Vanessa that experience isn't a liability you can offload with a catchphrase and a boardroom smirk. She'll fight it, I said quietly. Harold shrugged. Let her. Courts don't like arrogance dressed in ignorance. And I've yet to meet a judge who'd side with a CEO who fired half the senior staff without reviewing the contracts. I looked out the window. My maple tree stood tall beyond the glass, its leaves rustling gently in the wind. Linda and I had planted it the year we bought this house. It had survived lightning and ice, grown stronger with each storm. Funny how some things just keep standing so long as their roots are deep. I turned back to the contract and picked up my pen. No threats, I said. Harold nodded. Just facts. And for the first time in 48 hours, the weight in my chest began to lift. Not from revenge, but from clarity. I knew what I had to do next. It started with Thomas. I'd trained him 12 years ago when he was fresh out of Purdue. Still, learning how to handle people as well as schematics. He was quiet, precise, always a step ahead in his thinking. Our head of engineering for the past decade. I called him that morning. They let me go too, he said before I could even speak. His voice held no surprise, only disappointment and a quiet, tired sigh I could feel through the phone. I called Jennifer next, 31 years in quality control. She kept the lab running like a sealed system. Nothing got past her. No meeting. No warning, she said. Just a manila envelope and an HR rep who looked scared of me. By the end of the day, I'd spoken to 8 people. All of them over 50. All of them long-timers. All of them gone. Harold's name came up a lot. I gave each of them his number and told them the same thing. Call him. Just talk. You've got more leverage than you think. But something else happened too. Beneath the frustration, there was a quiet thread of unity, loyalty, not to the company anymore, but to each other. We'd shared years of late shifts, machine breakdowns, emergency repairs and casseroles in the break room after funerals and baby showers. That doesn't disappear with a signature on a termination letter. I found myself scribbling names in a notebook, like a battle commander counting troops. Not for war, for something different. I didn't know what it was yet, but it was forming. I could feel it in my bones, humming low and steady like a machine warming up. By evening, my kitchen table looked like a logistics center. Notes, contacts, resumes, timelines. Linda used to say my brain was half gears, half heart, always turning, always tethered to something real. Her picture on the mantel looked peaceful. I called Harold one last time before bed. They'll be calling, I told him. Not just for lawsuits. He paused. Then what? I looked out at the maple tree again, the one we saved after lightning nearly split it in two. Maybe it's time we stop patching someone else's legacy and start building our own. And for the first time since I walked out of Vanessa's office, I felt it again. Purpose. Deliberate. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself, it just shows up. The conference room smelled like fresh carpet and synthetic confidence. Glass walls, polished table, and a tray of untouched coffee that had gone cold. Vanessa sat across from me, perfectly posed, blazer sharp, jaw tighter. Next to her, their new corporate lawyer, Some kid named Justin who still looked like he ironed his shirts with YouTube tutorials. Harold was beside me, calm, professional, the kind of presence that made you reconsider your tone before you raised your voice. He set my contract on the table without fanfare, flipping it open like a priest opening scripture. "We're offering 6 months severance," Vanessa said, her voice clipped. "Let's not waste time." Harold didn't look up. "Per section 12, paragraph 3, Mr. Row is entitled to 24 months severance at current salary." That clause was co-signed by Charles Harper himself. She snorted. "We're restructuring, that's cause." Harold lifted his gaze. "The contract defines cause, ethical violations, criminal conduct, or documented performance failures. Do you have documentation?" Justin shifted in his chair. He opened a slim file and shuffled papers, an attendance log, a few vague notes about culture fit. Nothing actionable, nothing enforceable. "Stanley refused to align with our modernization plan," Vanessa snapped. "That's insubordination," I finally spoke. "No, that's experience. You didn't like how it looked next to your PowerPoint." She leaned forward. "You're burning bridges, Stanley. We control industry optics. You'll never get another offer in this town." I folded my hands. "That's fine. I'm not planning on staying in this town." Vanessa's jaw twitched. "Then sue us. We'll drag it out for years." "I've got time," I said evenly. "And Harold doesn't bill by the hour." Silence stretched. The hum of the AC filled the corners of the room. Then the door creaked. Ben Charles Harper stepped inside. He looked older, paler, but his presence still carried weight. Vanessa stood in surprise. "Dad, I need a word," he said softly. "We're in the middle of now." Vanessa looked stunned, but she rose and followed him out. Through the glass wall, I saw them speaking. Her arms moved sharply. His didn't move at all. Just that slow, deliberate stare he used when he was listening and weighing everything at once. 5 minutes later, they walked back in. Charles looked at Harold and said, "Prepare the severance. 24 months. Exactly as promised." Vanessa said nothing, but her silence said everything. The deposit hit my account a week later. $320,000. Clean, contractual, final. It sat there in my banking app, a number larger than anything I'd ever seen attached to my name. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel rich. I just felt still. The money didn't matter, not really. It was never about revenge or payout. It was about principle, about the quiet dignity of being treated like your work had weight. I met Thomas 2 days later at a roadside diner halfway between our houses. He looked tired but lighter, like someone who had finally stopped clenching his fists in his sleep. He stirred his coffee without drinking it, a nervous habit I recognized from long nights troubleshooting production lines together. "Harold got me a year's severance," he said, eyes on the mug. "Not as much as yours, but enough to catch my breath." I nodded. "They want you to sign anything?" "An NDA," he muttered. 5 years. Can't talk about processes or internal practices." I let the silence linger before sliding a business card across the table. "Douglas Clean," I said. "Owner of Precision Parts. He's looking for consultants. No NDAs, no politics." Thomas eyed the card. "Why are you doing this?" "Because someone needs to build something real again," I said. "And I'm tired of watching everything we worked for be sold off in pieces." He looked up, finally meeting my eyes. "You starting a company?" "Thinking about it. Small batch, custom, precision work. The kind Harper used to be proud of. No suits, no fluff, just honest engineering." A flicker of something sparked in his expression. "Not ambition, faith." "I'm in," he said softly. We sat there a while longer, not mapping out business plans or timelines. Just breathing. Just being men who'd been written off and still had something left to build. That moment wasn't a declaration of war. It was the start of something better, something born from respect. And for the first time since I walked out of Harper, I felt alive. I shook hands with Douglas Clean in the back corner of a converted warehouse on the east side of Indianapolis. The concrete still smelled of fresh paint, and the echo of our footsteps chased us across the open floor. He was grinning under that thick white beard of his, sleeves rolled up like always, clipboard in one hand and vision in the other. "You sure about this, Stanley?" he asked. "Starting fresh at our age?" "I'm not starting fresh," I said. "I'm finishing right." The plan came together faster than either of us expected. Douglas had the capital, the real estate, the supplier connections. I had the team, the old guard that Harper had discarded like broken tools. Thomas came on first, head of engineering, sharp as ever. Then Jennifer from quality control. Jason, one of the best CNC programmers I'd ever met, joined the week after. Each time someone walked through those warehouse doors, I felt a piece of something broken click back into place. We named it Cornerstone Precision, Thomas's idea. "You build from the corners up," he'd said. "That's how you make something that holds." We didn't make big announcements, no ribbon cutting, no press release, just honest work, quiet progress. A few clients followed, companies we'd earned loyalty with through decades of delivery, not discounts. Our first order was for a series of custom hydraulic regulators, the kind Harper had phased out under Vanessa's new vision. It was the kind of project that required more than formulas, something closer to craftsmanship. And that was exactly what we were here to restore. Some days I walked the floor, listening to the whir of machines we'd handpicked. Other days I sat in my modest office reviewing designs, writing notes in margins, sipping black coffee from the same thermos I'd used for 18 years. Vanessa had erased our names from the Harper directory, but she hadn't erased the knowledge we carried, the relationships we'd built, or the pride we took in doing things right. What she cast aside was now being forged into something stronger, not out of revenge, but out of reverence. Reverence for work done well, and for the quiet hands that built everything she thought she could redesign. The first message from Jennifer came late on a Tuesday. Just a photo, no caption. A scan of a memo marked internal use only from Harper Machinery's leadership team. Subject line, Client Retention Risk Assessment, Q3. Highlighted notes, production delays on 4/7 contracts. Warning, Midwest Manufacturing considering withdrawal. Employee feedback, high stress, long hours, unclear direction. I stared at it for a long time, the soft hum of my desk lamp the only sound in the room. The Harper logo in the top right corner looked oddly out of place, corporate branding slapped onto desperation. Jennifer had stayed on after the purge, too close to retirement to risk jumping ship. But she hadn't stopped watching, or caring, and she hadn't stopped sharing. More followed. Screenshots of emails, snapshots of whiteboard notes hastily erased during meetings, a spreadsheet listing missed QA benchmarks. One chart showed employee turnover spiking in every department Vanessa had optimized. I never asked Jennifer to be a mole. She offered, quietly, out of loyalty, out of frustration, out of fear for what was being lost behind the glass walls and jargon-filled meetings. Meanwhile, Vanessa was on LinkedIn talking about disruption and digital transformation, still blaming legacy inefficiencies in every interview. Still convincing herself that burning the roots would make the tree grow faster. But trees don't work that way. I didn't feel smug or vindicated. Watching something you once helped build crumble is not a moment for triumph. It's a moment for stillness, for clarity. I'd warned Charles once, before all of this, that a name on a door doesn't make someone a leader. That vision doesn't come from buzzwords and charts. It comes from knowing what's beneath your feet, from knowing whose hands built the floor you're standing on. Harper was cracking, and not because of age, but because the foundation had been replaced with mirrors, and mirrors don't hold weight. The call came in just after dusk. I was in the workshop behind the cabin, wiping down the frame of a '72 Triumph I'd been tinkering, with something to keep my hands busy while my head sorted through bigger things. My phone buzzed once, then again. I picked it up, not recognizing the number, but I knew the voice the second it spoke. Stanley. Charles Harper didn't sound like the man I remembered. His voice was thinner, hesitant, like he'd aged 10 years in just a few months. "I'm listening," I said, setting the rag aside. There was a pause on the line. Things aren't going well. I waited. Let the silence do the asking. She's selling off assets. Specialty machinery, even the new programmable lathes I approved before stepping down. She liquidated the Fort Wayne property last week. And now, Midwest Manufacturing pulled their contract. The words hit like rusted gears grinding in reverse. Midwest had been with Harper for decades. A contract like that wasn't lost. It was driven away. I don't have control anymore, he continued. I kept my shares, but the board's been distant. Now they're nervous, and I'm starting to see what I didn't want to before. I leaned against the workbench, the weight of it settling in. Charles Harper, the man who built an empire with grease-stained hands and stubborn grit, was finally seeing the fault lines. You need something? I asked, calm but not cold. I need a conversation, he said quietly. Tonight, my house. Bring Thomas if he's willing. I said nothing for a beat. Then, you're asking me to help clean up the mess your daughter made. I'm asking you to help save what we built, he said, voice catching on that last word. Another pause. 7 o'clock, I replied. I'll bring Thomas. I hung up and looked around the shop, tools in their place, machines in mid-restoration. Quiet, solid, still worth saving. Some things are. The boardroom at Harper Machinery still smelled like oiled wood and old ambition. Same polished table, same leather chairs. Only the faces around them had changed, newer, younger, more uncertain. Vanessa sat at the head of the table, flanked by her carefully curated executive team, clicking through her quarterly presentation like a lecturer who hadn't noticed the fire behind her. 37% revenue loss. 3 major clients. Gone. Manufacturing delays, staff turnover spiking. She called it growing pains. I stood quietly at the back of the room, just another shadow among many, until she saw me. Her voice stopped mid-sentence. What is he doing here? She snapped. The board chair cleared his throat. Vanessa, the board has reached a decision regarding the company's leadership. Stanley is here at our request. Her mouth opened, closed. Her eyes darted to Charles, seated halfway down the table. He didn't flinch, just nodded once toward me. Mr. Row, the chair said, would you like to proceed? I stepped forward and opened the folder in my hands. The same one Harold Preston had once used to secure my severance, except this time it held something far more permanent. Harper Machinery will merge with Cornerstone Precision, I said, laying out the contract. The board has approved the acquisition this morning. Vanessa laughed, a short, sharp sound that echoed like broken glass. This is absurd. I'm the majority shareholder. No, Charles said softly, rising from his chair. You hold 20%. I retained 51. Her face went pale. With that control, he continued, I voted in favor of the merger. I slid the contract across the table to her. She stared at it, shaking her head. You can't do this. I already have. The door opened. Thomas stepped in wearing the navy jacket he used to save for trade expos and client pitches. Calm, solid, unshaken. He'll lead the new division, I said. Vanessa looked from face to face, waiting for someone to side with her. No one did. It's just business, I said finally, echoing her words from months ago. Nothing personal. She didn't speak as she stood and walked out, but her silence said everything. A year later, the hum of machines had become music again. The merged production floor of Cornerstone Precision and Harper Custom Hydraulics buzzed with measured rhythm. CNC. Arms gliding, presses cycling in harmony, welders sparking behind safety glass. There was motion, but no chaos. A system built on respect had a sound of its own, and I could hear it now, clearer than ever. Charles stood beside me on the upper observation deck, leaning gently on his cane. His health hadn't improved, not in any way a doctor could measure. But there was more color in his cheeks, more light in his eyes. Purpose, I suppose, can do that for a man. We hit record margins this quarter, he said, handing me a folder. Best numbers in 5 years. I flipped through it. Black ink where there used to be red. Client retention was up. Employee turnover nearly non-existent. We'd filed 3 new patents. too were Thomas's ideas. I smiled. We're not just surviving, Charles. We're building. Below, Jennifer moved with her usual quiet precision in the lab space we'd redesigned from the ground up. Jason was training 2 new programmers, young, eager, and listening. Thomas, ever the craftsman, was sketching a component by hand before transferring it into CAD software. The old guard hadn't resisted change. They'd guided it. Experience. Innovation. Finally in the same room, shaking hands instead of taking sides. Vanessa called me last week, Charles said suddenly, his voice low. I glanced over but said nothing. She's in Miami, he continued. Started a consulting firm. I waited. She asked if I'd invest. I told her to come back to Indianapolis first. Learn it again, from the floor up. And? She hung up. But then she called again the next morning. Asked if the offer still stood. I didn't press further. Some lessons have to ripen on their own. We stood for a long time in silence, watching what we had saved, what we had reshaped. It wasn't the same Harper or the same cornerstone. It was something stronger, something that grew from pain but wasn't defined by it. Some bridges burn, others become the foundation for something better. The maple tree we planted the first year Linda and I moved in had turned gold again. Its leaves drifted gently onto the yard, catching in the hedges, the gravel path, the old bench where we used to drink coffee on Saturdays. I stood in the shade of its branches, the same place I stood after I'd been fired, holding the contract that reminded me who I was and what I was worth. Back then, this tree had been thin, almost fragile. We'd wrapped its trunk in burlap. During that first harsh winter, watched it survive lightning, pests, a fungus that nearly took it. We never replaced it. We just gave it what it needed: space, time, attention. That tree had earned its roots. Now it stretched tall above the house, quiet and unshakable. I ran my hand over the rough bark, remembering the way Linda used to say, "If it outlives us, we did something right." She was right about a lot of things. About me staying grounded, about never chasing glory, about how sometimes the most dangerous storms don't come with thunder. They come with silence, with people you trust smiling while they hold the axe. Vanessa never understood that. She thought legacy was a weakness. That age meant irrelevance. That power was loud, but power, I've learned, is also in the quiet decisions, in the lines of a contract, in the pauses during a conversation, in knowing when to let go and when to build again. I looked across the yard where the shadows were, getting longer. Cornerstone was thriving. Charles had found peace, Thomas had found purpose, Jennifer had found her fire again, and I had found something better than victory, clarity. Linda would have liked that. I bent down to gather a handful of fallen leaves, crimson, gold, brittle in my palm. Proof that seasons change, that endings can be beautiful too. Not all lessons are written in books. The ones that stay with you? They cost something, a job, a friendship, a piece of your pride. But what they give back is yours to keep forever.